Venture Connect. Anyone that takes the time to visit our website and read about what we've done in building a network that now numbers more than 12,000 people and helping our first-time entrepreneurs find those resources, we've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs that have collectively laid the foundation for the creation of thousands of jobs. So it's not just jobs that I might have created in a company that I started, but rather my helping as a volunteer, helping that next generation create companies, because that's the way we can turn around and restore economic vitality to upstate.
Assemblywoman Tunney, biggest deterrent, how do you break down the deterrent?
Thank you. Let me just say something that the media doesn't cover is one reason I have to point out what's going on with my opponents is because according to their financial statements, each of them are worth between 50 and $150 million in net worth. Obviously, I'm nowhere near that, so I don't have the resources that they have to fund their campaigns. I don't have Nancy Pelosi behind me who's spending anywhere from $3 to $4 million on a smear campaign against me. But both of them have received tens of millions in cronyism, in money from the taxpayers. Martin Babinec says his jobs plan, it doesn't include that. His jobs plan that he's talking about is a complete hypocrisy. He has received between $14 and $16 million in tax credits alone in years 2014 and 2015 for his business that's not located in New York. And how many jobs has he created? As he asked, he said, we are laying the foundation for creating jobs. Who are this network of 12,000 people? Are they located on a chat board? Because the total assets for this corporation 2 years ago were 170,000. So how many jobs are created in this Upstate Venture Connect, which I believe is the forerunner to that company, another company founded in Delaware, another company, Martin Babinec's company, is not found in New York. Ken Meyer's company was founded in New York, claims it has 37,000 jobs, but guess what? Only a couple of hundred are in Broome County, and with the special thanks of cronyism and Governor Cuomo, they're going to be doing a nice groundbreaking with our taxpayer money to bring a distribution center for a retail operation back to Binghamton area. I'll tell you how you create jobs. And one other thing, it just makes me laugh, and I'm a career politician. I got elected when I was 50. I am now 55. I term limited myself in the state assembly. I could go back in that horrible district, and yes, I could probably be there for life. And the assemblymen and the senators are going to vote themselves in a raise. They did it already. I voted against it. I could do all those things. I'm on a mission. I'm trying to do the right thing. I don't have the resources they have. But let me tell you something. I run a small business. We don't get government tax breaks. We don't get government money. We do it the hard way, like all the rest of you who run small businesses. We have to lower taxes. We have to reduce regulations. We have to stop job-killing regulations like Obamacare, and we have to stop sending our jobs overseas and allowing, for example, most of Dick's Sporting Goods products are produced in China and Asia and Hong Kong. They're not produced here in the United States. Every product from our company is produced here in New York. Thank you. I'm sorry for going over.
Mrs. Byers, would you like to take it from there?
Thank you. I'm baffled that being successful and, yep, so they tell me I'm pretty wealthy is viewed as a negative. I'm baffled that, I'll let Mr. Babinec speak for himself since apparently we're both painted with the same colored brush, but that being successful is on the backs of others. $300. $300 is what my father started his company with. And as far as tax breaks, somehow tax breaks has become a dirty word. But that's not because it's because you don't know the definition of it. A tax break doesn't mean tax-free. And I'm not sure why you would criticize, and it's actually not a retail business coming to Broome County. It's a distribution center. A distribution center which is going to employ 500 people. I'm not sure why that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. And in New York State, it's not a very friendly business climate, but businesses are trying to make it work. And that's how you create jobs. If you just say, we're not going to move, that's it, we're going to have the same old, same old. Why would someone come here? You have to create a business-friendly environment, and you have to make it so businesses want to come here. I couldn't be more proud of my business, and I'm not. My family business, I will never back away from that. As far as Are campaigns being funded? Really? I mean, I just don't get it, but
Mr. Babinek?
I'm not embarrassed about having been successful in starting a business from the ground up myself, along with my wife. My wife and I took a lot of risk. We were very fortunate. I tell people all the time, if I had tried to start that company in upstate New York with what I knew in 1988, we would have failed. The difference was the environment. I've chosen to use some of my means to help that next generation learn from the things that I've learned and help overcome the hurdles that we created. I'm not ashamed of that. With regards to the charge of cronyism, I'm really scratching my head on that one. It's like, you know, when it comes to taking tax credits, which as an employer, remember my company is the employer of record today for about 340,000 employees. That means that we're processing payroll in excess of $14 billion a year. So are there some credits that come to us? Yeah, they're the same that's available to all employers. It's not cronyism. By definition, it is a tax credit that is available to all employers.
Move on to other questions.
Fine, that's fine.
Assemblyman Lieutenant, you're first on this one. All three of you touched upon it, but I hope you would expand about educating the current and future workforce. What do you feel are the biggest educational challenges and what needs to be done to improve the situation here in the 22nd District?
Yeah, thank you. Education is a really important issue, but let me first say one thing in response to the last question. I don't begrudge anyone being wealthy. That's what the United States is about. It's about being wealthy. But it's not doing it by taking advantage of taxpayers. It's not also by using cronyism. And Mr. Babinek decries the Startup New York plan, which, by the way, dragged 9 people to indictments last week, Governor's Startup New York plan. And Mr. Babinek was one of the people who traveled around the state and attended Startup New York conferences with Governor Cuomo. We have a picture of him. And he has a quote. He was quoted with Governor Cuomo supporting this program. Today, he's against it. Well, I would be against it too, but let me tell you something. I stood up on the floor of the State Assembly in 2013, and I've been fighting against this plan. I've been fighting against it by writing a column in the New York Post that was published about cronyism, and that's what it is. And he supported this. He's the biggest donor to Hillary Clinton in this community, and nobody defines cronyism any better than Hillary Clinton, save Andrew Cuomo. And to the education question, I've been fighting as a member of the Education Committee. We need to get resources to our schools. I know a lot of people say, that's not a conservative thing. But one of the biggest problems with education is many of the ills of society have been born in our school districts. Our school districts need help. I've been fighting the unfair school aid funding that's come from New York State that has hurt our school districts. On the federal level, we need to understand that forcing Common Core and other unfunded mandates against our school districts, trying to come up with a central planning idea and taking the right of our local taxpayers and our parents and our professional teachers. Teachers are professionals. They know how to teach students. Let those people make the decisions, and we need to give them the resources to do that, and that's going to be the best way to educate our population in the future, to gain critical thinking skills, which is what education is about. Thank you.
Mrs. Myers, you're next.
thank you. Education is, as I've stated before, is my passion. Personally, I think education is the key to everything, including world peace. It really is. If you educate people, they have an understanding. If you educate people, they can have a job. They can have self-worth. They can provide for themselves. Education is the key. Yes, we need to stop the unfunded mandates. We need to look at what are we doing and what's our goal and our objective. We need stronger alignment between pre-K through 12th grade. Common Core has become a dirty word, and it's really not. The Regents Reform Agenda, the rollout of that, is a disaster. Common Core means to have the same high standards for every grade across the United States, so education is universal. 3rd grade skill set in every state should be the same. We are a mobile society. 3rd grade, if you move to any other state, your child shouldn't be behind or ahead. That's a good thing. How we achieve that should be on a local level. You don't take the local control away from your local school board who knows their community, they know their students, they know the parents, they know what the needs of those students are, because that's not universal. Even just language and vocabulary across the country is not the same. We need to invest and continue to invest in early childhood education, something, one of my opponents think that is unnecessary, that children should just be allowed to play. We need to prepare our students for the jobs of tomorrow, not just the jobs currently. We need to also encourage a lot of our students that they can have good middle-class paying jobs in the trades. You don't necessarily have to have a 4-year degree in order to be successful. And that's what I think is the way and the key to education. Thank you.
Mr. Babbitt.
Before I touch on education, let me point out that if you think about the fact that I've been running a nonprofit helping startup companies, it would probably be not a surprise to learn that the one and only Startup New York event I ever attended was the actual kickoff of the Startup New York program, as I was optimistic. Obviously, it did not work out as planned, but it would be a lie to say that I traveled around the state supporting the governor on this. I've been very outspoken. I have been outspoken in my criticism of the design and construct of the program. And I feel very confident that what I've done with my nonprofit has indeed helped hundreds of entrepreneurs. Now let's get back to education. Education, I agree that stopping Common Core is a priority for education so that we can restore more local control in both our school districts and, importantly, our teachers in the classroom. I'm also a strong believer in recognizing there's a whole range of opportunities to put tools in the hands of our teachers that are in what we'll call the digital curriculum. It can help not only with adaptive learning and distance learning, but it can really make our classrooms a much better experience for especially our next generation that is proven of digital competency. I've helped my local school district in Little Falls advance that, and we're very excited about the progress that we're making. And I'm able to take that knowledge and help bring it into both the policy-making side and also the opportunity to work with other school districts powering down that same path. Finally, I'd say very key in my education platform, which is posted on my website, is the opportunity to help students realize it's not just about college prep, but there are more that we can be doing in our schools to prepare people for careers and not just college. We can do a better job at that. There are some programs now, especially with the digital curriculum, that can advance that, and supporting our BOCES program, giving more awareness to not only trades opportunities, industrial opportunities, but also things involving coding, which is very much in demand and very accessible for people that are in high school today to walk out of high school into one of those jobs that are very high paying.
Thank you, Mr. Babinick. Early on, you all talked about bridge building when you took office. Let's talk literal bridge building infrastructure needs in the district. I think each of you would agree that if local business is going to survive, grow, and then thrive, a solid infrastructure is necessary to accomplish that. However, many municipalities are battling aging and deteriorating roads, bridges, and sewers that are costing millions of dollars, A, that they don't have, and B, that could be used in other places. What do you feel are the most pressing infrastructure needs, and how will you advance that cause at the federal level? And that's posed first to Mr. Babbitt.
On the infrastructure side, some of the problem is related to how the current funding formulas work. When you think about the fact that we have higher mileage cars that we're purchasing less gas for, that's one of the reasons there are fewer dollars available today that are funneling its way down for things like supporting our bridges and roads. So part of my belief is we have to look at alternative means to the gas taxes that currently are the major source for much of that infrastructure. We also have the split that is between both state and federal. You think about interstate roads and the involvement of federal and pieces of that, and also funding that's available, some from feds and some from state. Being involved in supporting the infrastructure projects that we have here would be a goal that I have as Congressman. I think that when it comes to infrastructure, we also want to be looking at how we can take best use of the resources that are here, including our businesses that can be involved in supporting that infrastructure. I'm a proponent of, on the tax side, the possibility of having a large infrastructure bank be a single fund, maybe even put together with repatriation of taxes that right now are sitting overseas with American companies that are taxed so high they don't want to bring those earnings back to the U.S. If we had a tax holiday, a lot of these big corporations would bring the tax dollars back, and my goal would be to say, let's set up an infrastructure bank and actually fund not only our roads and bridges, but even things like broadband access and other important needs in our communities, and do that through a large federally managed infrastructure bank if we had it funded through this tax repatriation.
Councilwoman Tenney?
Thank you. I don't think we have a revenue problem. What we have is a tax and spend problem. We are collecting the highest taxes combined in New York State than any other state in the nation. We spend an awful lot on infrastructure, but it's not spent properly. We are rating at the state level our gas tax funding. It's not that people are driving Priuses and less consuming. The price of gas is down, so that's affecting it, but we're spending huge amounts on infrastructure that are not going towards roads, bridges, and especially in our region, our waterways. We have a huge problem in our communities. As we noticed, 2013, we had the major floods going through here. We had some relief from the state, but DEC continued to not allow our local governments to properly dredge and take care of and maintain our waterways. I'm looking at some county legislators up in front, people from Herkimer. This was a really terrible time, particularly in Mohawk, Ilion, Little Falls, and all the way up through New Hartford, and even my family business sustained almost $500,000 in damage just from that flood. But we are not using the money properly. The money is being used for other things. It's being diverted right out of the transportation funding in the state, and the same thing's happening on the federal government. Earmarks are interfering with the transportation bill, so those funds aren't going to where the infrastructure should be. Between DEC and EPA, we're focused on wrong things. We shouldn't be focused on creating water management of an acre of water somewhere that happens on a family farm. We should be focused on, again, building roads, building bridges, sustaining them, and making them safe. That's what grows businesses. That's what government should be doing, not taking money and giving it to big corporations so they can in turn give back to politicians and curry favor with them, because that is crushing our small business community. And I'm a big supporter of infrastructure spending, but again, we have a tax and spend problem more than we have a revenue problem. Thank you.
Kim Myers, your response?
Thank you very much. So I think we all agree, and based on the question, that it's not just in the New York 22nd, across the entire country, our infrastructure is crumbling. It has been for years because we've been kicking the can down the road. Every year, every state, every municipality, they don't have the funding to do it right. We need to have a comprehensive plan for our infrastructure. We need to look at not only the roads and bridges that are they're rated, most of them, a D. We're just waiting for a tragedy to happen, and then we're all going to react. We need to be proactive and come up with a plan of how we're going to rebuild our infrastructure. And with that will come jobs, and then we will be able to sustain businesses that want to come here because we have an infrastructure to support them. We do need broadband internet because you can't have a business in today's world that doesn't have access to broadband. We need a comprehensive plan to look and prioritize and make this a priority. Most of you that are involved in your local municipalities, you know how you don't have any funds to patch your roads, to fix your roads. And I guess that's my point, is all we keep doing is patching it and patching it. As an 18-year member of the Board of Education in Vestal, I have a small parallel to that we did the same thing in Vestal for decades. When budget cuts, when there's no funding, what gets cut and what gets kicked down the road is maintenance. We finally had to bond for $72 million to bring our buildings up to safety standards and to put the infrastructure into them. Some of our taxpayers came to us and said, if we are going to do this, promise me you won't let us get into this condition again. Create a fund so that you can maintain what you rebuild. And that's what we need to do with our infrastructure too. We need to fix it, and then we need to have a plan to make sure that it stays in the condition necessary.
Thank you. Mrs. Myers, we'll stay with you. Next question, immigration and national security. And although it wasn't brought up in last night's presidential debate, immigration has been thrust into the U.S. spotlight with extreme responses. One party nominee calling for a wall and the other nominee calling for increased naturalizations for those eligible. Where do you find yourself in relation to those stances?
Certainly, immigration has been a hot button in our country for several administrations. And not to repeat myself with the same phrase, all we keep doing is kicking the can down the road. We need comprehensive immigration reform, and especially in the year of 22nd, when we have large agriculture, large farms, we need comprehensive immigration, and the idea of building a wall and the idea of that we're going to round up 11 million people and deport them is not realistic. And I think everybody realizes that. We need to look at how we can solve this problem in a pragmatic way. National security is a huge issue, and it's a very important, and it's a #1 issue. We need to make sure we know who's in this country and how they are in this country and where they are. To have a comprehensive immigration reform, you can accomplish both. I also think who we are as a nation involves immigration. We are a nation of immigrants, and to say we don't want anybody else in here at all denies who we are and what our history is. But safety is a #1, and I don't think you can paint it all with a broad color brush. Back to our local farmers, they need to have access to seasonal workers, or we're not going to have our grocery stores filled with produce. We need to come up with a plan. Again, we need to stop making it a pointing finger, and we need to make it stop making it an extremist. It's either everybody goes or amnesty. I haven't heard anybody really talk about amnesty. I really haven't. You know, we need to come to the table, and how are we going to solve it? I believe that we can. I think it's easily solvable. You have people who are undocumented come out of the shadows, they pay a fine, they go through a background check. If they are involved in any criminal activity, they're deported. We have to solve this, and we have to solve it in a pragmatic way, and it's not to build a wall.
Mr. Babbitt?
I believe immigration policy begins with securing the border and whatever means we need to do so, and also to enforce existing laws, because there's too many, even sanctuary cities as an example, places where laws are selectively enforced. And when it comes to immigration, which is a federal issue, we should be consistent across the country and with the enforcement. I'm also a believer when it comes to reforming immigration, as everyone agrees needs to be done, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that there is a long line of people who want to immigrate here. People from all over the world want to come here because of the opportunities we have here in the U.S. We're in a position to pick and choose who are the people that we want to let in. And while there are humanitarian reasons where that sometimes can come into play, we have to make sure that we can vet whoever is going to come into the country so that they're consistent with our values and not going to present a threat to our security. But we can also be looking at who can contribute to growing our country. Heck, even in the reception prior to this event, I had a chance to speak with one of the Herkimer County students who came to me and said, hey, I want to transfer to another school, but immigration policies are getting in the way for me to, after I graduate from Herkimer, go into the college that I want to go. These things, along with who are the people that can come into the country with the right technical skills, the right opportunities to start companies, all play into good job-generating potential. So when we come up with immigration policies, which has to be a collaborative effort, comprehensive immigration reform is talked about oftentimes, but hasn't been reached, in part because one of our parties believes it has to be an all or nothing deal. We've got to get one bill that does everything, and the other side says we can be selective and let's just choose individual pieces. As an independent, I hope to work both sides of that aisle and do what I can to get us immigration policy that will help us and all of our businesses create more jobs.
Thank you, yeah. Our Constitution is the governing document that we all are going to take an oath if we win. I've already done that as a member of the State Assembly, so it's very important to me. So I always look at every issue in two ways. Is it constitutional, number one? And number two, is it something that is going to be good for our district? And it has to meet both. Our government, our Constitution was founded based on two themes, national defense and border security. Those are the two primary roles of the federal government. We have to secure our border. Borders are what protect sovereignty and protect our nation. It affects us in every way, whether it's dealing with trade, unfair trade, crossing the borders and not protecting our own sovereignty and our own companies that might want to trade with the other countries, but also dealing with citizens. And yes, we are a nation of immigrants. My grandparents came from another country. They came here for a job. They didn't come here for any other reason. They wanted freedom and a job. They didn't come here for social services or other benefits. I think most immigrants come here for good reasons. They want to be part of this experiment. They want freedom. They want to have their individual rights preserved. They want the chance to live the American dream. But we have so many citizens that have come here, people that have come here, I shouldn't say citizens, they're definitely not, who come here for the wrong reasons. This community is special, especially in Utica. We have one of the largest immigrant populations, especially for the Bosnian immigrants in the entire nation. As someone who spent the last 35 years of my life studying, visiting, and abroad, mostly in Yugoslavia, in the former Yugoslavia, I welcome them here because they came from a war-torn country. They were here as refugees. And we certainly want to be welcoming all those people that come for that reason. But when it comes to people that want to do harm to our nation, we have to secure the border. We have to do vetting that's credible in order to protect our citizens. That's the primary goal of federal government. And as far as sending citizens back, I don't think anybody really agrees that we want to throw anyone back just because they're here illegally. I think we want to make sure we find the criminals and send them back first. And I think about other people. But remember, I have hundreds of friends from the former Yugoslavia who do not meet the asylum standards, who are sitting in other countries waiting in line to be U.S. citizens. Why should we allow people to cross the border illegally and jump ahead of the line of those people who are waiting to be U.S. citizens? That's the question we have to answer. Thank you.
All right, this will be the final question of the evening before we head to our closing statements. Final question, we'll start with Assemblywoman Tenney. The 22nd Congressional District is very large, encompassing 11 counties. Beyond staffing multiple offices in various locations, how will you assure us that you will service each corner of your district? In other words, how do you assuage the fears that a Utica-based representative will not be mindful of the Binghamton area constituents, and subsequently a Southern Tier-based member of Congress will not fully focus on the needs of the district's northern residents?
Thank you. That's a great question for me. Of course, as I've said, my assembly district is almost 200 miles long. It's probably almost twice the distance from one end to the other. This congressional district, although this has 717,000 and change citizens in it. I have worked really hard to maintain constituent services with my very difficult assembly district. I have an office in Ulster County there, and I would have offices throughout the district to make sure the constituents' needs were met. I think my office is well known for excellent constituent service. I'm still serving constituents in my former assembly district who know that we get the job done and we do a good job for our citizens. I bring a lot of expertise to this job, as not just as a lawyer, but as a small business owner and somebody who actually understands the bureaucracy of government and how to help citizens get through it. It's going to be a little easier on me with my cars traveling through this district, believe it or not. But I think that that's the mission that we're on, is really constituent service. And one thing that hasn't been brought up, I think, in this debate, which I find interesting, is that one of the number one jobs of a congressperson is to protect our veterans. And we have huge issues with veterans in terms of the VA and making sure veterans have access to services. And so that's another thing that I think that is going to be instrumental for me. I'm the mother of a U.S. Marine, and I am really concerned about our veterans community. We have a very large veterans community in Congress. And so making sure that we are using and accessing all of our veterans organizations, whether it's trying to reform the VA or dealing with VFWs or American Legions or other veterans groups. It is very important to deal with constituent issues, and I already put 50,000 miles a year on my car. I doubt anybody else does that. And by the way, in the state assembly, we do not get paid to work in our district. That is all at my own expense. So it's something that I take seriously. It's really probably the most important part of the job. Thank you.
Mr. Babbitt?
Representing the entire district is indeed something that's very important to all of us. And that means not only the willingness to travel, but the willingness to understand the issues that are unique in each local community, large communities and small. I think that you probably want to look at what is the person's track record, including where is the candidate visible throughout the campaign and how much time is being spent in different locations. That might be a leading indicator. I would also point out that from the last 6 years, the mileage I've put on throughout all of upstate New York speaks a lot about the need to get that input and to provide help across a very broad geography. Because in this mission to create more jobs, that are especially in these new industries, the resources that a particular company or entrepreneur might need might not necessarily be located within their community. Across the broader upstate area, they could be. And that's what I've really made it my mission these last 6 years to do. And I will continue doing that in an accelerated fashion as your congressman. I also say that on the subject of veterans, and I appreciate Annie for bringing that up, and I appreciate her son Trey's service in the Marines, as well as her family for raising him in a way that instilled those values. It is something, when it comes to veterans and the contribution that our veterans have made in building our country, I've learned more about that since starting this campaign than maybe any other single issue. I've really learned a lot. It means much, and there is much that I would do as your congressman to help bring more organizations that are working hard to help our veterans together, pooling their resources and collaborating, just like I've tried to describe what I'm doing on the job creation side. Big opportunity there.
And finally, Kim Myers?
Thank you very much. It's funny because that topic has come up a lot, the size of the New York 22nd district, and so everybody feels represented. And coming from the Broome County area, it was something that caught me a little bit by surprise, because we've never had the congressional member be from in the Broome County area. But living there my entire life, I never felt that we were underrepresented. So as far as representing everybody, that would be your job as a congressperson. You would have to do whatever you had to do to make sure everybody felt that they were represented. And the one thing that I will say is, to me, it was also assumed, well, of course you would have an office in Utica, of course you would have an office in Binghamton. Those are the two largest cities, you know, a little bit more central. And so that would be something that would absolutely be necessary. The other thing that's almost essential, not only in business, but in serving your constituents, you have to have a staff. You have to have a staff that is responsive in a timely manner to your constituents, and they bring those to you. To think that any one person can represent everybody in this district alone would be a misrepresentation. So yes, I would make sure that I would engage in a staff that was competent, that understood the 22nd, and actually most of them would be local, because they're the ones that are going to know the local issues